name is Marco, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing why Captain America Civil War is the best Marvel movie. There are a few things that elevate Civil War above other top-tier Marvel movies, but perhaps the most important thing is the film's unique emotional stakes. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I find it difficult to get emotionally invested in action and superhero movies because you know that the hero is going to defeat the villain and in the end everything is going to turn out alright. Plus, you usually don't learn anything about the characters along the way. This is not the case in Civil War. Even though we have a villain that we're pretty sure is going to get defeated, the movie isn't as concerned with him as it is with the conflict between our heroes. Plus, even though this is a big-scale movie with many of the MCU's major characters, it's got relatively low stakes. I mean, I know that if the super soldiers hidden in Russia are activated, some bad things could happen, but let's be honest, the Avengers have faced far deadlier enemies in the past and done just fine. And those guys don't even appear until the end of the movie. The true emotional stakes of this film are centered around Team Cap and Team Tony. I would even go as far as to say that this conflict is the true villain of the story, even though Helmut Zemo is pretty cool and has a super evil sounding name. We spend a lot of time watching the characters scramble, trying to work through the moral dilemma that they've been presented with. And we spend a lot of time watching them try not to lose the people that they love. For example, Cap with Bucky and Tony with Pepper and Rhodey. Throughout the whole movie, we're watching the characters get more and more emotionally torn apart and desperate, culminating with the splitting up of the Avengers rather than a neatly tied up conclusion. This diversion from Marvel's tried and true formula makes it a lot easier to get emotionally invested because a moral gray area is introduced, and you're forced to pick a side and reevaluate your leanings as the story progresses. All of this makes Civil War the quote-unquote deepest Marvel movie in my opinion because it focuses on the morally ambiguous conflict that's unfolding instead of just giving you some cool action set pieces and quippy dialogue, even though the movie still has all that and is really fun. Now, even though I discussed Zemo a little bit in the first part of this video, I think it's appropriate to talk about it a little bit more here since, after all, villains are more important to superhero movies than to most any other genre. And I really think that Cap vs. Tony supplemented by Zemo makes for really the most interesting and well-done conflict/villain out of any Marvel movie. Most people would give that title to Thanos or Loki, but I don't think that either of those villains cause as much emotional turmoil as we see in Civil War. Now, neither Zemo nor the Sokovia Accords conflict alone would have been enough to split up Cap and Tony. Instead, Zemo is used as a catalyst to heighten an already existing conflict, dragging the Avengers down a dark path and making the conflict whole. While thinking about Zemo, I was also reminded of a quote from a different movie that I think is a good representation of Zemo's role as the villain in Civil War. The quote is something that Solomon Lane says to Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible Fallout. And what he says is, "I am the fallout of all of your good intentions." And likewise, I think that Zemo is the fallout of all of the Avengers, specifically Cap and Tony's good intentions. He even says at the end of the movie that he knew that he would never be able to defeat the Avengers on his own, and so he opted to pit them against each other. He used Bucky and the death of Tony's parents to make two great friends and allies brutally fight each other, and cause a huge rift between them. And that's how the film really ends, with that fight. I know that afterwards we get a bit more of a happy ending with Cap's letter, but I view that more as a glimmer of hope amidst what's really a sad moment for the Avengers. Zemo wins in the end and gives us basically what is the most melancholy ending, in my opinion, to any Marvel movie because of its emotional impact and lasting consequences on the franchise. Zemo's role as a catalyst and the nature of his success at the end of the movie is what makes him, although not a great villain on his own, a perfect fit as the villain in Civil War. I mean, when you think about it, he accomplished as much as almost any other villain in the MCU. Although most of what I wanted to discuss in this video was the conflict, the emotional stakes, and Zemo's role as the antagonist, I also want to add a few more things just to round out my analysis and hammer home why Captain America Civil War is the best Marvel movie. First of all, the action in this movie is really well done, and at the very least, on par with the best action in any other Marvel movie. Bucky's escape and the final duel at the end, they're both really well done, and the escape especially does a really great job of introducing Black Panther to us for the first time. Also, I think that there's a case to be made that the airport fight scene is the best action set piece in any Marvel movie. The fight is super well designed, which is really impressive given how much is going on, and we're introduced to Spider-Man and Ant-Man on a group stage for the first time, which adds some freshness and levity. And I really don't think that we've seen a fight like this before, since usually when heroes team up, they're fighting some kind of faceless horde and not other heroes, especially not this many. I also wanted to talk about the comedy in this movie a little bit too, because I think that Civil War actually stands out as being one of the funnier MCU movies. Everything we get from Spider-Man throughout, and especially during the airport fight, is priceless, and everything between Bucky and Falcon is great too. Their resentment of each other is really hilarious. And I know that some other MCU movies may have more jokes because they're designed more as comedies, like Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, but I really think that Civil War can compete from a comedy perspective. And that's because, at least in my opinion, some of the funniest movies aren't actually comedies, because humor means more when it isn't being thrown at you constantly throughout an entire movie. I think that when a movie that has tension and a kind of darker tone utilizes comedy properly, it can serve as a sort of break from the intensity of the rest of the movie. And I know that Civil War isn't exactly the darkest movie, but it is more serious than most other MCU movies, and that's partially due to the emotional stakes that I talked about earlier. All right then, that's pretty much it, guys. I really like Captain America Civil War, even though I'm not the biggest MCU fan myself. And given the formula that they tend to go by, I'm really glad they decided to try something different and kind of not have a true villain and focus more on the conflicts between the characters. And yeah, if you guys liked the video and want to see more from me, then like and subscribe, because movies, you know?
You will subscribe.